You probably noticed my t-shirt. You know that the deaf community absolutely love their language, American Sign Language. People always come up to me and say, you know, your ASL is wonderful, and they must assume that I grew up using American Sign Language, but that's not the case. In fact, through high school, I was mainstreamed. At home, I used signing exact English, C sign. My parents could sign C, my sister signed C. The interpreters I used at school signed C. I didn't learn American Sign Language until later, probably not till college. And I was actually a little resistant to learning American Sign Language because I didn't feel it was necessary. At home, I used C and everybody understood me. The interpreters at school used C. And then, of course, my hearing friends didn't sign at all. Now, I had some deaf friends that I saw once in a while because I only saw them once in a while because they were at the residential school for the deaf, so I only saw them on holidays and weekends. But I understood them and they understood me, so I didn't feel the need to use American Sign Language. But something did change my mind where I decided I definitely needed ASL. And it was my cat who changed my mind. So I got a story for you about my cat. This cat that I grew up with, looking back now, I really misnamed this cat. I should have given it the name Moses. Because this cat, everyone, including animals and people, were terrified of him. This cat was mean, nasty, a tough son of a bitch. He had scars all over his face, fangs hanging out the side, his ears were torn, his tail was broken. Nobody wanted anything to do with this thing. Even the trees in the front yard, when they would shed leaves, the leaf would go into another yard because it didn't want to make my cat mad. Anytime there was people and animals around, if my cat showed up, they'd part like the Red Sea. That's why I should have named him Moses. This cat was fearless, and it would fight anything, and usually would win. I would see this all the time growing up. I would sit in the living room near a window by the street, and I'd see, like, all the cats in the neighborhood, because there were a lot in our neighborhood. And then maybe a new cat would show up, new to the area. And it would look something like this. The new cat would come along and go, "Yo, what's up?" And the other cats would be like, "Hey, new cat. What's up? You new here?" And the new cat would be like, "Yeah, I'm new. What's going on?" And the cats from the neighborhood, you know, would bump fists with them and say, "Well, welcome to the neighborhood, but I gotta warn you about this house over there. You see that one?" And of course, they'd always be pointing at my house. "The cat that lives there, don't even get close to it. Don't approach it or anything." And the new cat would be like, "No way, man. I'm from New York City. I know city life. This is no big deal." And they'd try to convince him, "No, this cat's different. He's different. Leave him alone." And the new cat would be like, "I ain't scared. Watch me. I'll just head right over there." And the cats from the neighborhood would be like, "Yeah, nice knowing you, buddy. You're grave." And the new cat would be like, "Well, check this out." And would saunter on over there. And all the neighborhood cats would be watching while he would walk up to my house into the front yard, and just a single blade of grass would be sitting there. And the cat would go, "Check this out," and flick it. And you would see a blur of gray fly out of nowhere, which was of course my cat, and a huge fight would ensue. By the time it settled, the new cat would have no fur, naked, going, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And my cat would be like, "That's right, I'm watching you." The cats in the neighborhood, of course, would be laughing, making fun of the new cat. I saw this time and again. My cat was completely fearless. I even saw it chase cars sometimes. One day I remember there was a dog who I had never seen in the neighborhood. And I was sitting there at the window, and I see this dog, a Great Dane, with its big old muzzles and floppy ears, come walking on down the street. I didn't know if he was new or he lived somewhere outside the area and was just wandering around. But I had never seen it before. And as that dog got close to my house, my yard, and that same little blade of grass was sitting there, I tried to warn that cat. And of course we had those old crank windows back then. So I'm trying to crank it open to warn this dog. And as I get it a little bit open, I'm telling it, no! And that goofy dog, he just gets closer and closer to my yard. I'm like, no! And he sniffs that blade of grass, and that gray blur comes flying. My cat's ears were back, eyes wide open, whiskers out, fangs out. That poor dog was like, oh no! Tried its best to turn itself around, and my cat was in hot pursuit. That poor dog's tail was out there, and it barely missed my cat's claw. But there was no way my cat was giving up then. My cat chased that dog all the way to its house. There was a dog house in the back of the dog's house, and of course a fence there. And of course it had a gate that the dog could have gone through. But that dog just knocked that fence right down, jumped in its doghouse, and quivered like a bowl of jello. My cat got up to that dog's house and was like, yeah, now I know where you live. Watch yourself. But the interesting thing is that in the house, my cat wasn't mean or cruel at all. It was the sweetest thing ever. Probably because, it was safe in the home. It would protect its turf, but inside the house, it felt grounded. It was safe. It would never hurt me and my sister. And we would rough this cat up. We'd mess with its ears, pull its tail, and the cat would just lie there and take it all. Never once did he scratch or bite us. At least not in the house. But of course that changed one day. Because my cat really liked the house to be a quiet, peaceful environment. And that was the way it was when I was growing up. But remember that as I was growing up, I SimCommed. Remember, I signed exact English. So usually I spoke at the same time. I did go through oral training, but I had speech therapy. So I started SimComming, which means simultaneous communication, talking and signing at the same time. So I would SimComm as I grew up with my family. But as I grew up, it became more like SimComming with an attitude. Of course, I was a teenager by then. Usually I'd be getting into it with my folks, of course, which is usual for a high school kid. And my cat was so tired of my voice at that time. And one day he had had enough. Let me tell you, I was in a fight with my mom in the kitchen. We were on either side of the counter. And I was SimComming, yelling. She's SimComming and yelling. My cat, of course, is over in the living room and is getting so annoyed at this and finally just had enough. Took off his little glasses, put away its little book, put its pipe down, took off the cigar jacket, and started walking over. Commando style. Got his camo makeup on. Crawled all the way around the counter to my mom's side of it. And me and my mom are getting into it. And the cat jumped up on a chair and looked up over the counter and was like, hey, shh, guys are too loud. And of course, we were just ignoring the cat and still going at it. My cat was like, all right, I warned you. Leaps up on the counter, flies up, Matrix style, all of its claws come out, its fangs come out, all the hair stands up on the back of its neck, ears go back, and I looked just in time to see it scratch my arm and make it bleed. My mom was like, "Oh," and went dead quiet. The cat landed on the counter and was like, "Yeah, I'm watching you." Lay down and went to sleep right there. And that's when I realized something. My cat's pretty smart. He actually had figured out the principles of sim calming. If I stopped signing, I was going to stop talking. So he scratched my arm, so I would stop signing and therefore stop talking and be quiet. Smart cat. And it also meant it was time for me to learn American Sign Language. No more voice, just signing.